Our first speaker today is Adam Losey. Adam represents companies and individuals. He's a partner with Losey Law, and Adam represents companies and individuals in high-stakes litigation across the country. In addition to his litigation practice, he routinely advises clients on a variety of information security, privacy, electronic discovery, technology contracting, social media, and internet-related matters. This is a emerging industry is cyber law. It's becoming a really big thing. So we wanted Adam to come today and share with us. Welcome, Adam Losey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. And I think we've got about 10 minutes here, which is kind of compressed for a whole bunch of areas of law. And as he mentioned, my practice is a little bit schizophrenic in that it ranges from everything from contract drafting, negotiation, to going to court and quibbling about things. Although generally we're kind of for the people who are against the people who are for the people. We're normally on the defense side there. But anything at all in the realm of information security and privacy, if anybody has any questions that they want to ask somebody that does it every day, we work with the FBI a lot. Typically when there's a big breach, a company will hire us or we'll work under an insurer, come in, and then act as something called a breach coach, where we help work with forensic companies, work with law enforcement, work with public relations firms, work with the people that send you the letters that you probably shred and ignore, and operate the call centers that most of you probably never call in when you get your initial emails and things like that. But before I get started, again, because it's an abbreviated amount of time and I'm here for you, does anybody have any questions at all about cybersecurity in the context of breaches, contract negotiating, drafting, anything else like that? Yes, ma'am.
Why isn't the government more proactive in protecting us?
They actually are. I mean, and again, I deal with them a lot, and I think sometimes government gets a little bit of a bad rap, although, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. A lot of people laugh at that statement when they say that. Typically, the FBI is more of a responsive organization. They deal with threats and prosecution and investigation. The Department of Homeland Security, and if any of you want some really good free resources too, the Department of Homeland Security is more on the preventative care side and assisting businesses and individuals in hardening, essentially. Federal government is hardening themselves as best they can, but if you're talking about in the context of why aren't they doing anything to help the private sector, they actually are. And if you're interested, there's a free organization called InfraGard that I'm the president of. If you just Google INFRAGARD, it requires a federal background check to join, but it's free to join. It takes a couple months, and we have regular meetings at the FBI headquarters and other places where we talk about information sharing and intelligence to help people guard against threats. So the InfraGard program, I think 400 of the Fortune 500 are members. We've got over 45,000 members nationally, and I think that's one of the primary and lead programs to address what you're saying. These bad guys are really well organized. They talk to each other, they share information, and the InfraGard organization nationally and locally is designed to counteract some of that. Any other questions? Yes?
What's the first thing to do after a ransomware attack, besides having Tim back up your data?
Yeah, so first thing, ransomware is a really good topic. So ransomware typically, just to kind of frame the topic for everybody, typically ransomware encrypts all your data and then doesn't give you the encryption key, right? It locks everything up, and then somebody comes to you and they say, I want some money associated with it. The reason ransomware is so popular is because of the economics associated with it and the economics associated with traditional fraud. And it's really interesting because you could stop ransomware overnight if everybody just stopped paying the ransom. Folks don't do this for fun, they do it for money. Actually, there are some that do it for fun, but they're very small. So normally, if you have wire fraud, like in mortgage, the mortgage firm, there's a lot of attempted and successful wire fraud in residential and commercial real estate transactions. So they'll get a couple $100,000 if they sit in an email account, wait for a long time, are able to misdirect a wire. But what happens with that wire? So you have a $300,000 wire, goes out to a money mule somewhere here in the United States, and then it goes to somebody else overseas, and it goes to somebody else, and the person that initially did this bad stuff winds up with half or less of the money because they're paying intermediaries, and there's also direct channels where they can be traced and captured, prosecuted. Most ransomware is using cryptocurrency and other things where it's a direct payment, and it's typically a small payment, and it's near impossible to trace. So ransomware is really, really popular because it's a really big moneymaker. It's a lot easier for them to just spit out, lots of stuff and infect a lot of machines, ask for a small ransom than it is for them to target and kind of watch an individual and go after a big stack of money. And people like low-hanging fruit. So that's what ransomware is. Very big threat. The first thing you should do after you have a ransomware incident and you get locked down is try and find where your backups are. I mean, hopefully you just restore your backups. Do you pay the ransom? Absolutely not in 99% of circumstances. And I'll tell you why. First of all, by definition, the folks that do ransomware, they're criminals. A lot of them are states like North Korea, ISIS. A lot of very, 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 very bad organizations and people generate revenue by committing these types of crimes. Some of them are, maybe they're not ISIS, but they're organized criminals. And if you pay them, you're giving money to them. It is not legal to give money to ISIS or North Korea or some of those other organizations. Hopefully you know that. Don't do that. It's bad. And so if you pay the ransomware, you run the risk of running afoul of some of those export control laws. You're supporting crime, and a lot of times they don't even unlock it. A lot of times they'll take the money and they'll say, okay, either thank you very much, go away, or they'll unlock it and you'll get on a good payer list. And I've seen this happen for more than one client, where before our involvement, they'd paid one, but then they're getting hit over and over and over again because people know that they're a good payer. Generally, really the only thing you can do is either try and decrypt it, which most times you can't, or restore backup. So unless you have good backups, a lot of times you're sunk. One other particular issue, which I have not seen this in the wild yet, but I know that certainly there's the capability, is the type of ransomware that they'll deploy, leave in your backups for a while, and then trigger it once it's gotten through your typical backup rotation. And so if you restore the backup, then they'll hit it again. So you have to be careful with your backups and make sure that your backups are being parsed appropriately, or before that they're restored, they're parsed for whatever the attack vector was that got in your system in the first place. Anybody have experience with dealing with ransomware? I mean, I've seen it. It happens all the time. It's very, very common. And you absolutely want good, redundant backups, as many layers as you can get. And if that happens, a lot of times it's easy. Oh, haha, this happened. All right, well, restore the backup. And then typically what we'll also do is we'll get a forensic vendor to come in and make sure there wasn't any exfiltration of data, because a lot of the legal work associated with a data breach revolves around notification. So like HIPAA and 48 states and Gramm-Leach-Bliley and a lot of other state and federal laws have requirements where you need to tell people if information goes out. And so typically you want to do a little analysis or take some effort to document the fact when you have a ransomware incident that nothing went out. Because sometimes it does go out, and that can trigger notification obligations. Again, it's a much bigger deal in healthcare and in finance because they're more heavily regulated and they have certain federal laws and very, very big dollar consequences if they fail to notify or fail to notify properly. 3 minutes, yes, sir.
How much confidence should we put in cybersecurity measures versus having cybersecurity insurance? Can you kind of touch on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I like that question. So if I can rephrase your question for everybody, how much confidence should we put into actually taking cybersecurity preventative care measures, and how much can we just buy insurance and say, we've got insurance, don't worry about it? You generally can't, because most insurance policies now, they're a lot better at underwriting them. I used to see policies like 5-6 years ago that I was shocked were underwritten because companies with major data problems where there was no diligence. Now they're doing a lot of diligence on underwriting, so typically you're not going to get insurance unless you have basic measures in place. And most policies from every major insurer I've ever seen require you to conduct reasonable diligence, or else they're going to deny coverage. Like a great example, and some insurers are getting really good about this, do you have multi-factor authentication on your business email systems? If you don't, by the way, and you can, please enable it, because business email compromise is probably the #1 most messy, common, expensive, hassle kind of breaches that we see on a day-to-day basis. And multi-factor authentication, you all probably know, it's pretty simple. I'm sure you use it all the time. It's when you click on your phone when you log in your email, or you have a little dongle or something, 2 factors, 2 or more factors associated with the point of login. So if somebody steals your username and password, wouldn't necessarily let them get into your email account. Also, most insurance policies have deductibles. I mean, most major insurance policies, it's at least 50 to 100 on a deductible, and that's, if you have a small breach, you're still gonna pay that much money. So on top of that, insurance can never really make you totally whole. Insurance can do what lawyers can do. It can give you money in court. Although we can get injunctions. We have some other special powers that insurance companies don't. But they can't repair reputations. They can't prevent you from losing your license or getting fined by the Department of Health and Human Services if you're a hospital or something else like that. So we advise clients that insurance is a good part of it, but you can't just get insurance and say, forget it, I don't need to worry about it, I've got insurance, because it only covers the financial aspect. It typically requires you to take certain steps for the policy to be valid and for you to be able to collect. And again, it doesn't address reputational and other harm. 1 minute? All right. Well, one more. All right, one more.
What percentage of cases do you actually find the person who did it and get some kind of restitution? I mean, is it 0 or?
6.578. No, the question was how many cases do you find the person that did it? Depends on the type. Like employee theft, near 100 if it's somebody local. If it's, a lot of our work involves chasing down people that think they're anonymous when they do something online, but they're not. That's kind of, were they dumb? Did they use their smartphone or were they at a Starbucks Wi-Fi every time? For the international stuff, that's law enforcement's game. I'm a private lawyer at a private firm. I have never successfully gotten money from any Russian, Chinese hackers or international hackers that have caused harm. Typically, it's addressed by insurance. What do you think? Yes or no?
One quick comment.
All right.
Quick comment.
Yep.
The last cybersecurity place I went to, they said the first phone call you should make is to your lawyer after a breach.
I mean,
Would you recommend-
lawyers always think that, right? You're right.
You need somebody
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
to look at your exposure.
You do, and people like lawyers to handle it because of the attorney-client privilege, which generally protects confidential communications made in the course of representation between a potential client, and a lawyer. So you have special protections on those communications. People like them. I mean, we certainly think so, but we have a vested financial interest in saying so. It's important to have somebody that can help guide you through that process. A lot of folks will call their insurer first, and then the insurer will typically assign a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I like people calling lawyers first. So thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. If you have...
Great, Adam. Thank you so much.